and they were less exposed to all these products that they were using on their clients, spraying on their hair and whatever. And all of a sudden, a lot of them became so fertile. Now they're having babies.
Maybe also the fact that they didn't have anything else to do. So they were entertaining themselves with other activities.
So I ask people sometimes, do you want to be eaten?
I mean,
So the lion comes through
No.
the door
Yeah.
and wants to eat us. What are we going to do?
Run. Three, two, one. Evo,
Mohammed, thank you for having me.
thank you so much for coming. I really, really, really enjoyed our conversation last time. It was probably one of the most eye-opening and informative presentation I have ever attended.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so it was really, really something else. But I want to just you to sort of give us an idea, especially for the ones that don't know you yet. Who is Evo?
My name is Suvee. I'm 43 years old and I was born and raised in Belgium. I'm currently running a beef organ supplement company which specializes in the freeze drying and the selling of beef organs in capsules for people who know, just like us, that organs are very healthy to eat, but maybe they don't want to eat them, they don't know how to cook them, so you can nowadays just consume it as a capsule. And I'm very passionate about health and fitness and optimizing one's health to be the best possible version of oneself.
Amazing. You definitely don't look 43, so that's a good sign. So with all of this, especially all of the journey leading up to the creation of this company of yours, do you feel like you sort of cracked the code to masculine living, or you feel like it's still a learning curve for you?
Many times I have thought I cracked the code on optimal health,
Yeah.
and then every, let's say, year and a half, something new comes in, or something that was already part of it, but I didn't really appreciate the impact that it had.
Yeah.
A big one like that is sauna. I've always noticed every time I go into a sauna, first, that I don't like it, and secondly, when I leave the sauna, after 20, 25 minutes, I feel this boost of brain energy, like energy from the top down. The body can be a little, not tired, but a little like impacted by the heat, but it's like the brain is lit up. And of course, when the brain is lit up, then the body gets energy. And I haven't always incorporated the sauna as a protocol. Now I know if I don't have access to a sauna because I'm traveling all the time, I know I need to have some good exercise in, like boxing. That makes me sweat heavily. I tend not to sweat as heavily when I'm doing weight training, which I'm already doing. So this connection of physical exercise or physical uneasiness that the heat brings about or the exercise brings about with sauna or with boxing or any other type of martial arts is very beneficial for me. And that serves as an example of like something new that wasn't new, but I refound it, so to speak. And
Nice.
it seems like every 2 years there's something either more new. For example, like pain and suffering, that's one of my latest principles that I added to Ultimate Masculine Living. Or there's something that I rediscover.
Nice. And do you feel like in this journey that you also a lot of new discoveries or new, let's say, conclusions that you came up with as to how it also affects the mental well-being of a man? Because I remember you mentioned something very interesting. You're like, you hate the word depression and you don't like it.
Exactly.
And that there are a lot of other factors that are unrelated to psychological health that lead into what people say is depression or feeling depressed. I'm just curious to sort of pick your brain on that. Like, why did you come up with that conclusion that depression is something result of other factors or other circumstances?
Well, nowadays, especially in science, for the last 100 years, we have had this idea, or doctors had this idea. We will label any disease, and then we will find one pill that will fix this disease, or whatever they call it, or condition. The thing is, there can be many different reasons why, for example, someone is out of breath soon, or why someone feels sad. It's not one single nutrient or one single medication. There could be many, many different ways. And to come back to what you say about depression, I remember even as a child, I didn't like the labels. So I was very careful to be like, well, I just feel sad. There's nothing really wrong with feeling sad. Maybe I can figure out why. If I can't figure out why, it doesn't really matter how I feel. What matters is I keep doing the things that will be beneficial for me. So sometimes we go to work even though we don't feel like going to work, but we do it anyway because we have to provide for our family, we have to provide for ourselves. So we don't necessarily need to feel happy all the time. Or in fact, I find it sometimes not as, how do you say, efficient to feel happier in your work. I mean, sometimes I felt euphoric and I've noticed I tend to not really get to work, but I feel a bit uneasy or just neutral or meh, I get my best work done. It's easier to focus and zone in on the work and you forget everything else. Sometimes feeling good is actually not that efficient for work. And to come back to the question, yes, the depression. So there could be many different reasons why we deal with something, and there's not necessarily one magic pill. But I've noticed when we stick to the principles of ultimate masculine living, everything will improve. And then I've noticed down the line, oh yeah, when I was a teenager or when I was in my 20s, I was dealing with this. Now it's completely gone.
Yeah.
What did I do? Well, I did many things. I changed my whole life for the better. And everything to better is like an upward spiral moving me forward.
Amazing. And you more than anyone else had this laser focus on other strength that you may have, because I remember you shared with us a very interesting condition that you had from when you were younger. And how this actually allowed you to explore more of what your mental, of what your body can do and how much you can improve your mental strength. So I think a lot of it had to do also with some disadvantages that you had as a younger child. So how did you work around that?
So a good example, for example, is the fact of that I have a hearing impairment. I'm completely deaf in my left ear. I hear about 30% in my right ear. And as a child, especially in school, they put me in the back of the class. It was super easy for me to be distracted because I barely heard anything the teacher said. So a child that can't hear anything and people are just sitting calmly in class and the teacher is talking. Imagine
just
she's talking
so distracted.
in different language,
Yeah.
a language you don't understand. So I was very distracted. And as I got older, and also when you meet really interesting people, you really want to hear what they say. So even if I had this advantage, I would laser focus on their lips, how their lips are moving, what are they saying, trying to make it out. And I've noted this actually helped me to have a better focus now than some other people. Because I've practiced that so many times, just laser focus on someone and give them all my attention. So this disadvantage of hearing impairment helped me to have a very strong ability to focus on a single thing.
Yeah, and because I noticed this a lot, because even when you were talking and telling us about everything that you felt, like every time you eat something, you feel it almost immediately. Like if there's a brain fog, you feel it almost immediately. If you eat something that's a little bit off, you feel it almost immediately. And I don't think many people have that sort of, they're not that in tune with their body as much as you are. But for you, and also maybe given with the fact that you also have some tactical background, so you're really much in tune with your senses.
You're very observant. And in fact, you're right. You. It could be the fact that I'm in my own world, living in my own world. There's less distractions from outside. So it's easier for me to tune in with how does my body feel? How does my mind feel? Do I feel an uptick in energy or my energy is a little lower? Why is it lower? What did I just do or what did I just eat? And constantly analyzing without actually thinking that I'm analyzing anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the main things that you did in the amazing presentation that you had when we were together is I think, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the first things that a person or any man should eliminate from his environment is toxic chemicals and basically anything related to toxic substances or even fragrances. And I wanted to touch a little bit on that because you were saying that almost pretty much all household items now have just really horrible chemicals that interfere with the human body and specifically a man's body, right?
Yes, exactly. Especially on labels, these are mentioned as fragrance. And fragrance can actually be 100 different type of chemicals all thrown together. And a lot of people will say, well, it's only a small amount. But you don't need big amounts. Like if when women are on birth control or men who take steroids, the amounts they take are super small. We're talking about micrograms, milligrams. You wouldn't be able to see it even if it was on a scale. So when we have these household products like cleaning products or even deodorants, perfumes, soaps, detergents, all these things, they have this fragrance in them that rubs on our skin, or we inhale it through our nostrils, and they act as xenoestrogens in the body. That's just one example. And estrogen is female hormone. So I have been very mindful of those. And just a few days ago, I forgot who actually mentioned it, but this person wrote a book, and he wrote about these hairdressers during the lockdowns and during the pandemic. There were lockdowns, and all of a sudden, apparently, there was a baby boom between in people who had hairdressing as a job. Now, when we go to a hair salon, you just walk in, you smell all these personal care products.
Yeah.
It's just this big mix of all these different products, and a lot of them have those ingredients. So apparently these hairdressers were forbidden to work from governments because of the lockdown, and they were less exposed to all these products that they were using on their clients, spraying on their hair and whatever. And all of a sudden, a lot of them became so fertile, now they're having babies.
Maybe also the fact that they didn't have anything else to do. So they were entertaining themselves with other activities.
So I actually tried to look it up, the study, or look where he wrote it in the book. I haven't been able to dig further.
No, but I mean, I will give you my own personal experience. I developed really, really, really horrible skin condition from using what they call shower gel, or I don't even want to call it shower gel because it was anything but that, or even shampoo. It used to cause so much irritation that I'd always feel like my skin is always dry, and no matter what type and what I don't know, medical type that I used, it was always just really bad. I always felt that there was something off. So then I spoke to my grandmother, may she rest in peace, and I remember, or I think the conversation came up, and she's like, yeah, it's because you guys nowadays, this generation, God knows what you're using. You know, back in the day we used, if you remember, I told you about it, it was Aleppo soap, Laurel soap. Yeah, that's all you need. And I'm at that, I thought, it's just maybe an old woman talking. I'm like, maybe it's just her complaining about the younger generation as usual. But I did actually take her word for it, and I switched and I stopped everything, and I used this Aleppo soap. It's just made of 3 ingredients, which is soap base, laurel, and olive oil. Nice. And I started using it for my skin and the hair, and
exactly.
Gone. Nothing.
A lot of these products that they're using now, they didn't even exist until the 1930s, the 1950s. And before the 1950s, people were also clean. What were they using? Maybe they were using the things you mentioned, baking soda, lemon juice, lime juice, all those things.
But I remember that you also told me that even, and not just you, but a lot of people, but I think you really confirmed, re-emphasized everything that I was watching and reading online, that like, for example, something as inconvenient to stop using as deodorant. So the argument is twofold. First, it's really what you eat, as you mentioned. And the second is if you eat properly, you're not even going to smell, but even just as a precaution, just use lemon juice.
Yes.
So I just wanted to know, how does that, because people think it might be so inconvenient to drop it, but your argument is no, you have to treat it at the source. Yes. And the source being?
So when I was in my teens and 20s, my mother would make jokes about it, that I smelled bad or smelled very rapidly when I started removing all plants from my diet except fruits. So basically no more vegetables, there were no more smells. And let's say you work out a lot during the day and you have some odor around the armpits, just a slice of lemon or a slice of lime, you dab it on the armpits, all smells are completely gone for at least 24 hours. Wow. It works amazingly well. It actually works better than any deodorant I ever used as a child.
And is there what's the scientific reason, if you may, regarding why the vegetables are the main reason as to causing the odor, and why you were also telling and saying that it should actually be sort of eliminated from the diet?
So one of our biggest detoxification organs is actually the skin. So a lot of things are being removed through the skin, especially when we sweat. So that happens a lot in the sauna, also when we work out. So it would bear to reason that then the smells go out of the skin as well while we're sweating and removing all these toxins. It's also one of the reasons when people are in the sunshine and they burn rapidly, it's not necessarily the sun, but it's these toxic compounds that are in their skin are being removed from the body. And the sun hits those compounds, and those compounds have and those compounds cause inflammation in the skin.
Okay. So basically, it's all of the unnecessary substances are just getting into the stream or getting into the body from things that we're not really supposed to eat, and then blocking pretty much the skin. And what's your comment about like fluoride and things that are in toothpaste, for example, and teeth cleaning products?
So the fluoride that they use in toothpaste, from what I've heard, is not even a compound that exists in nature. This was actually a byproduct or waste product from, I don't know exactly if it was construction or actually I think it was fluoride that was a waste product from making synthetic fertilizers. And they had all this fluoride that they wanted to get rid of. And then they realized, oh, what if we put this in toothpaste? And apparently fluoride, even if it's the synthetic compound that doesn't exist in nature, does fortify teeth. But apparently it changes the way that the teeth are formed, and the bonds are different from natural bonds.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, because this fluoride thing, I've read it many, many times, and I know for a fact that it's just it actually, someone will even mention, his name is, I'm trying to remember, Dr. Ihab Hamarne. He's a very famous Jordanian like well-being sort of advocate, and he was saying that this fluoride also causes brain fog.
I wouldn't be surprised if it does.
But you also went further, and you also talked about the containments or the containers or whatever it is we store food and liquids in, and you were saying that plastic also should be banned. And when we were asking, like, well, what about BPA free? Where you're like, nope, still same problem.
Yeah. Because then it's usually BPS.
Yeah.
And BPS is a derivative or something similar to BPA, and the very few studies that they have done on BPS shows that it might be even worse than BPA. A lot of these products, they don't have to do certain studies that are long-term to show that there actually are no downsides. And so a lot of the companies, they start using them, and only down the line, 10, 15, 20 years later, we realize, oh, this is actually not good to use. Then they switch to another compound. Then it's another 10, 15 years that we wait before the news is out on this new compound. The same thing happens with synthetics that they use inside pizza boxes. I believe in the USA, the FDA, whoever it was, they banned the use of these pizza boxes. But then some of these manufacturers say, well, we have 100,000 pizza boxes here. What do we do with them? We can't just throw them out. It's a lot of money. And then they just said, okay, you can keep using those, just don't make any new ones. So while the FDA or whatever organ that overviews this already knew that these products are carcinogens, they were allowed to continue using them until their supply ran out.
So it's really bad. I mean, so basically just stick to glass, play it safe, and or just ceramics, like just normal stuff. Yeah. Now, just to touch a little bit further, also we went and you spoke a little bit more about exercise and fitness, but in particular weightlifting, and we spoke about how important weightlifting is for man's health. But what is it about weightlifting that is more than any other exercise that is really so exceptionally beneficial for man's health?
I think, can you repeat the last question?
Yeah, what is it about weightlifting in comparison to any other activity, like any other sports activity or any other fitness activity? What is really specific about weightlifting that makes it so much better than all the others? Because, I mean, I've heard that and I've read that many times, but you also provided the reasoning for it.
Well, one of the reasons is that weightlifting produces BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. While you use your muscles produce this. This goes into the bloodstream, goes into your brain, and actually sprouts the generation of new neurons. It preserves the neurons and the connections that are already there. Some other type of exercise also has as a benefit from BDNF. The thing about weightlifting is it also makes you physically stronger. There's the list of the benefits from weightlifting is so extensive that if they would all be provided in a pill, it would be the best medication on earth. And I don't think that science already has all the reasons why. I just noticed also that for me personally, life is much easier when someone's stronger. And the easiest way No, the simplest way to become stronger is lifting weights. And why I say the simplest, because it's not that difficult to do, and I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, lifting a weight each time, lifting a weight that's hard for someone to lift, and lifting it over and over again, and then do it again the next week or a few days later, each time focusing on progressive overload. Because a lot of people who go to the gym and they lift the same weights year in, year out. It's only beneficial if each time you increase the amount of weight or you lower the amount of rest, or you increase the amount of reps, and always look more.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, this is weightlifting is something I noticed that when you do it, you just feel really even happy. You feel like there's just a big boost of dopamine after, and I always wondered why, because when I do other exercises, I don't feel the same. Right? It's always with weightlifting that's just very different.
Weightlifting also increases the sensitivity of the oxytocin receptors.
Right.
And oxytocin also one of those so-called feel-good chemicals, just like dopamine is. And oxytocin helps us to bond better with whoever's on our social circle. What do I mean with bond better? It actually means understanding them better, being more empathetic. Sometimes, and I speak a lot for myself as well, I can be very self-absorbed. I've noticed when I open my eyes more, and weightlifting helps by increasing oxytocin, and actually focus on what can I do for others instead of thinking what can I get that's beneficial. Life flows easier. You actually eventually get what you want easier by focusing on doing things and getting things for other people.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things also that you're a big proponent of and you support a lot is fasting and just eating at specific times in a specific frequency and in a very systematic way. But I want to know how you concluded that this also affects your autophagy.
How it affects my autophagy?
Yes.
When, let's say in my 20s, when I first started lifting weight, I wanted to gain a lot of muscle, I wanted to gain weight, so I was eating a lot. And one thing I noticed, in the morning I woke up hungry and angry at the same time. And later I discovered that this is actually a sign of insulin resistance slowly creeping up. So what I liked about fasting is, first of all, you become so flexible metabolically, that you're not hungry and you don't need food to perform and to function. That's actually very liberating, especially when traveling a lot, being in airports, being in airplanes. I don't eat in airplanes nor in airports.
You don't eat at all?
No, I might bring some of my own food.
Yeah.
But a
like
lot
raw
of the
meat?
flights, exactly.
I saw a video, a reel of you. You were under the gate and just eating raw meat. And I'm like, if anyone saw you, they would think you're out of your mind.
And that happens a lot. So I still have some food left in the accommodation. I go to the airport. I just bring the meat with me. I eat until a certain time. And then I don't eat again until I'm in the new time zone in the morning. So depending on where I'm traveling to, it could be 20 to 36 hours.
It is such a liberating feeling. I mean, I can't imagine how easy it is, because even for me sometimes, like exactly as you mentioned, when you're hungry, you start feeling frustrated, you start feeling a bit angry, because you're just, especially when you're traveling and you're not really finding exactly the things that you want to eat. And I mean, definitely fasting is something I can tell you. In Ramadan, I also feel very different. When I'm fasting, I just feel happier, feel more energetic. Surprisingly enough, it's the opposite effect of what people expect it to be. Exactly. They expect you to be tired and lethargic, but no.
That's usually in the beginning when our body is adapting, because most of us, we've been eating a certain way for 20, 30 years. We have never been fasting, or we haven't incorporated in our lives. Then we get to fast, and then we get to improve our metabolic health. All of a sudden our body works better even without the food. Yeah. Like, as you say, become more efficient in thinking, less brain fog, more energy.
Yeah. More energy is definitely something that I notice, because I even before I break my fast, like I'm so full of energy that I just have to go to the beach and run. Like because I have to just get it out.
Awesome.
Yeah. But how does it also, does fasting also affect, from your experience, does it affect your microbiome?
How fasting affects my microbiome? Before I started using intermittent fasting, I would have this thing like that is called FODMAP sensitivity, or like a FODMAP diet. So I was very sensitive to apples, garlic, ginger, and whole bunch of other fruits and vegetables as well, they would bloat me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And since I started intermittent fasting, that went away. So now I can eat an apple and there's no bloating, but it was bloating before. That's one of the things. So I assume that all the fasting got rid of some of the
Yeah.
bacteria that generated all that gas.
Yeah. And is there like a specific way or specific timing that you follow or you recommend for eating? Like, how do you do it? Like, from what time to what time? And when do you stop eating and when do you start eating?
I know a lot of people, they prefer fasting from the morning until the afternoon, and then they eat in the afternoon until the late evening. For me personally, I've noticed a better way is actually eating in the morning. So I wake up at 6.
Yeah.
I might eat anywhere between 8:30 to 11 a.m.
Before your workout? Because I know the first thing you do after you get out of bed is workout. And you said it last time. You're like, get the hard thing done first. Yes. And do it.
So when I travel a lot, sometimes there'll be times I'll be a little leaner. If I want to gain a little bit more muscle, I'll have some meat before I work out.
Okay.
It's not always the case, but most of the times I work out first and then I eat after. And to get back to the fasting protocol. So since I always travel, sometimes it'll depend on where I am in the world or what's more convenient in that part of the world. I usually start my breakfast between 8:30 and 11 a.m. And then I actually stop eating 4 to 5 hours before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I haven't been that strict about it, but when I had the best sleep in my life was always not eating 4 to 5 hours before I go to bed. So if I go to bed at 9, that means my last meal is at 4 p.m.
Because I think that also has to do with digestive efficiency, right? There's a specific peak time for digestive efficiency. And when is that?
11 a.m.
11 a.m.
11 a.m. Supposedly the digestive tract is at its optimal performance.
So what do you do, like, if you have, I mean, this is something I still struggle with, and then it's always late night cravings, and it's always usually things that I crave that I tend to be sweet, or I want something like either sweet or something with carbs, and that's always at night, because even sometimes when I force myself not to eat those things and go to sleep, I wake up, I don't crave anything, but it's always at night. I don't know. What do you do for these cravings at night?
I had these cravings as well back in the day, and the one thing I noticed was, okay, we crave something sweet, just have a piece of raw meat, craving went away.
Gone.
And do that, maybe that'll happen maybe for 1 week up to 1 month.
Yeah.
And then nowadays I don't have it anymore.
But I have to get myself to the point of eating raw meat first. I mean, remember we had this discussion, and you asked a very good question, like, okay, which cultures here eat raw meat? And I told you we have, like, in Syria and Lebanon, or in the Levant countries, but particularly Syria, Lebanon, they eat raw meat, and they call it either habra or kimbeneye, and it's just with a lot of spices. So I think I need to have a discussion with my butcher and then have some arrangements done, and maybe that would work. But moving on in regards to cold exposure, I think you really, really put a lot of focus on cold exposure. I think if I'm observant enough, I think the two main things that you focused a lot on was cold exposure and chemical substances, and obviously food. But like cold exposure, because it has a lot of, let's say, it requires a lot of discipline to actually do it. But when it comes to that, you said that this is something that can really bring a boost, especially if you start it in the morning and you do it the right way. It could really start and kick off your day in the right direction.
Yeah, cold exposure is one of the biohacks that has the biggest impact for me. It really gave me that boost to not only get a lot of things done, want to get them done, and it also, surprisingly, it actually makes my vision a lot sharper. It made all colors more brighter, and everything just seems to be more pretty. Nice. Even though the reality has not changed, the only thing that changed was I went into the cold, and it was really hard and difficult, and it hurt, and I did it anyway. And then afterwards, after being in the cold, everything seems to be upgraded, like my perception, my senses. And of course, also this drive is 10 times greater than.
But how do you do it? Like, I mean, I know you use a cold bath and you just plunge in for a few seconds or a minute or whatever it is. But you also provided other alternatives and other solutions.
So if I can do it, I will use about between 10 to 30 kilos of ice, whatever I have, and I'll be in the water with the ice. Usually when the ice has melted, right then it's colder. And also when you're in the bath with ice, you could sometimes, if the ice is laying on your chest, you can get like these burns from the ice. So I wait until it's all melted, and I'll be in the cold anywhere between 2 minutes to sometimes 4 or 5 minutes. And the alternatives that I mentioned are, for example, you fill a bucket with ice and you hang that bucket on your shower head and turn it on. All the water that flows out of the bucket will be really cold. And another one that I like, I actually learned this from Dave Asprey, is you have a bowl. In any accommodation, have a big bowl, fill it with water, put it in the freezer. It'll be completely frozen. Now you fill the bowl with more water, and you hold your breath while you are in the water with your just your face in the bowl for anywhere between 20 to 30 seconds. And that way you don't have to get completely wet or completely naked in the bathroom just to have some cold exposure.
Amazing. And then you also talked about how it could also affect weight loss. The cold exposure can really be a big player in weight loss.
So cold exposure.
Well, fat loss specifically.
Yeah. So cold exposure nowadays. So for example, babies when they are born, they have a lot of a thing called brown fat, and a lot of adults when they're older, the fat they have is actually white fat. Supposedly white fat is not that active metabolically. It doesn't have that many mitochondria. And brown fat is actually brown supposedly because it has more mitochondria. So when you're able to turn this white fat into brown fat through cold exposure, you would burn more calories that way.
Amazing. And regarding cold exposure, what about how it affects your cognitive skills? Did you also notice something with that? Like do you feel like it just, and I think you mentioned this, like, do you just become more focused when you do it?
That helps with focus, yes, but the big benefit for me would be that there's more clarity in the thinking. It's easier to make decisions and to know what is the right decision to take. It's easier to memorize things, memorize, and actually the drive to scratch off all the tasks from the to-do list is bigger. It just goes faster. There's definitely also a speed aspect. After cold exposure, everything just goes faster without you feeling that I'm moving fast. It's just the flow is bigger. Yes.
And you also, a very important point before moving on, you also mentioned that it should be avoided after a workout because it interferes with hormesis.
The hormetic response after exercise. This is mostly for athletes. Sometimes we have these pictures of athletes after a long workout. They're sitting in a cold pool for 30 minutes or whatever it is. When we're in the cold like that for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's not really going to blunt the hormetic response. But those long sessions are unnecessary, and I would definitely not do them after a workout. If you want to do them before a workout, they'll have a big boost in performance. Of course, up until the moment that you're not cold anymore. If you're shivering, it's probably not going to help the performance. But when it cools you down before a workout, you have more time until exhaustion because the body's already cooled off before it starts working out. Okay,
that's really, really insightful. Now, when it comes to diet, I know you're a big supporter, big advocate of the carnivore diet, and specifically eating raw beef and liver. I mean, unfortunately, guys like you have already suffered a little bit because of the damaged reputation that the Liver King caused. Because he turned out to be a little bit of a fraud. But I know that you are very strict, very honest, and very transparent with your diet. But you focused a lot on liver more than anything else.
Yes.
And I'm really wondering why. Like, why is it that eating raw liver is something that just for you became a staple, became something that you must do?
Thank you so much for asking that. So when I was younger, especially in my teens, even early 20s, and like my whole 20s and my early 30s, I would sometimes have these, it's called recurring thoughts. You think about something and you can't stop thinking about it, even though you don't really want to think about it. And I noticed the main thing with liver, when I started eating liver daily, that went away completely. And then let's say I don't eat liver for 2 weeks, then I noticed it slowly coming back, like having less control of what you're thinking about or what you want to think about. And when I eat a lot of liver, it's very easy to focus on one task or to focus on the next task without getting distracted and thinking about things that don't have even anything to do with what we're doing at that moment. Another thing is the anti-fatigue factor.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned the study about the rats.
Mm-hmm.
And the liver rats were rats eating liver in their diet. They could swim more than 10 times longer than the rats in the other groups. Now there's some people online who say, oh well, the other rats that had the regular food, they were just anemic or they had nutrient deficiencies, and that's actually also a point. In liver, there's so many nutrients. It's probably the most nutrient dense food on the planet. Most people, for example, they don't consume enough folate. There's also vitamin C in liver. There's so many compounds, too many to name. There's choline, which helps with brain function, like I said, the focus. And if we all agree that humans at least are omnivores, we eat everything, that means that humans are also predators. We hunt our prey.
Mm-hmm.
Every single predator on earth, when they catch their prey, the first thing they eat is liver, which means that every single animal that didn't have a taste for liver first, they died out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't make it. They weren't strong enough. All their let's say, cousins or brothers, they got to procreate. So also for us humans, the hunter-gatherers that are still alive today, whenever they kill an animal, they eat the liver first.
Oh, wow. I actually, the first time I heard this was, or the first time I started getting exposed to this was someone that we both read about is Paul Saladino.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought at first he was a bit unrealistic, he was a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, when you were talking about it and you went into details, and I'm like, okay, so there must be something there.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned a really interesting way of doing it. You said at least start in a convenient way. Like, you don't have to eat it raw, but you could start cooking it. I mean, and it's already in the Mediterranean, or especially in the Middle East, it's already in the cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
So people eat it, but they eat chicken liver. So I don't know. But I'm assuming it's probably the same.
Just find the liver, the liver that you can find, start with that. There's a lot of reasons why I don't eat chicken nowadays.
Yeah.
The main one being a lot of chicken, they get fed a lot of antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Chickens are omnivores, unlike beef. So basically, some farmers can give chicken whatever they want to feed it, it'll grow. But then these compounds get incorporated into their tissues. And also, personally for me, I find chicken to be way too lean.
Yeah.
The chicken of old, like 100 years ago, they were not as big as the chicken that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
So.
And you referred to a study, a very interesting study, I think, by an author called Urshoff. It was published in 1951. And he pretty much said that anything you want, or all the nutrients that you want, is in, as you said, is in the liver. So you could just really live off of that, right? If you really had to only just eat one thing, this is probably be the
liver. Liver doesn't have that much fat, so just eating a liver, we would probably not have enough fat in our diet. But yeah, if, for example, let's say I go to a place where there's a competition, and for 2 days I'm going to do obstacle races every single day, and there's very little time to eat. We have to do everything fasted, or I have only 30 minutes to eat every day. Then I would eat just liver every day. Yes.
Oh, amazing! And then right now you eat everything raw.
Yes.
Still, so that doesn't change. But is there a benefit? I think you mentioned that there's a little added benefit eating it raw as opposed to cooked.
Yes. For me, I noticed that, for example, if I eat 1 kilo of cooked beef, I'll feel full. And maybe I'll be like, oh, I need to sit down for a moment. But I eat the same amount of beef completely raw. I don't feel full. I feel satisfied. And I can immediately go to the gym. I don't need any rest or break.
Wow.
I've noticed digestion is easier if it's not cooked raw.
Yeah. And this also brings me to my next question, is that you mentioned that this is why, for example, fruits can be also a good something good to eat in order to get the nutrients that you need, especially for energy, as opposed to vegetables. Because as you said, vegetables are to be avoided, not all, but most. But why is that? Why is it that you think fruits as opposed to vegetables, and I remember there was a very good reason that you mentioned, why is it that fruits as opposed to vegetables are much more preferred?
Fruit over vegetables?
Yes.
So I ask people sometimes, do you want to be eaten?
I mean,
some lion comes through the door and wants to eat us. What are we going to do?
Run.
We run. we smack the lion, we beat it, or
Yeah.
let's say we try to eat the lion,
Yeah.
or we try to eat a cow that's out in the field. The cow is
Yeah.
going to run away, it's going to kick us,
Yeah.
or if it's a horse, it's going to bite us. It's animals will fly away, run away, whatever they need to do to not be eaten. What about the plants? Do they want to be eaten?
Probably not.
So, but how are they going to defend themselves?
Toxins, they're just going to release
Exactly.
something.
So plants make these defense chemicals in their tissues to either defend them from predators, which could be insects and also herbivores, and also to warn the other plants around them there are predators here. So when a plant is, for example, being chopped up or being chewed on, we have these smells coming from the plant.
Mhm.
This smell is actually a chemical to signal to the other plants nearby, hey, watch out, there's a predator here eating us. And so then they can upregulate their defenses and make them more toxic.
Yeah.
And the thing with fruits is a fruit has a seed, and a seed is how a plant procreates. So when we or other animals eat a fruit and we spit out the seed survives and the plant can procreate. Or even if we swallow the sweet and
Yeah.
it passes our digestive tract and then ends up in the soil fertilized, that's also how the plant survives. But anything else from the plant, which is like the leaf or the stem or the root, like root vegetables,
Mhm.
when we eat those, the plant can't procreate. Now the plant dies. So plants try to defend from that. Also in nature, I believe about 95% of all plants around us in any garden or any place we go are toxic.
Mm.
But anywhere we go, every single animal is edible. And even the poisonous animals, usually we can cut out the organ and everything else will be edible.
Wow, amazing. But you promised me that you're going to get back to me regarding one thing I asked you, the garlic. I told you, I remember we had the discussion, I told you there was a long study that was done, and Tim Ferriss wrote it in his book, and he said that garlic is the single most important, let's say, it classifies as a root vegetable, right? I mean, and then he said that this for weight loss is just
For
amazing.
weight loss.
Yeah, for weight loss,
Interesting.
fat burning specifically.
Really?
Yeah, that and green tea.
That and green tea.
Yeah.
With green tea, yes. With garlic, the most of the studies that I saw about it was always boosting or touting the benefits for it for the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of beneficial compounds that we find in plants, we can also either get them from beef or get them from environmental stressors. Like
Yeah.
I said, the cold bath will boost the immune system. Even weightlifting will boost the immune system. So I prefer using those instead of a plant, because even though this plant might have a beneficial compound in it, what it gives here, it takes away there. It still have defense chemicals. So would it be bad, so to speak, for someone to eat garlic every day? I guess it also depends, because as I mentioned before, people with a FODMAP sensitivity, they can have garlic, or it will bloat them horrible and will give them a lot of diarrhea. So again, those type of scenarios don't really happen with environmental stressors or by eating animal-based foods.
Okay, interesting. Now, the next topic is my favorite one, because that's the one I get most criticized for, which is basically sunlight, because I love being in the sun. I love running even in the middle of the heat in the summer here. I'll be outside in the sun at the beach. I don't care. And I don't even put any sunscreen, but they always criticize you for this, because they're like, okay, you can get skin cancer, you can get sunburned and this and that. But I mean, leaving all this criticism aside, sunlight, as you mentioned, is an absolute must,
Yes.
especially in the beginning of the day.
Mhm.
Because there's just a lot of benefits, but I want to hear from you what's a conclusion you came up with.
Sunlight, especially in the beginning of the day, will set one circadian rhythm. I'll make sure that that person is aligned with the rhythm of nature, 24-hour cycle of dark and light. A lot of these people nowadays saying that the sun is dangerous, this and that, and they're touting these studies about skin cancer, etc. Then I will ask them, it's so interesting, because all the countries where there's more skin cancer prevalent, these are all in countries where there's not much sunlight, except maybe Australia, but all of the northern hemisphere, and where we have long winters, cold winters, where it's very difficult to get a tan, let's be honest. That's where the skin cancer is. So most of them don't have an explanation for that. Another one is that humans and all animals have been in sunlight for thousands and millions of years. There was no skin cancer. And
Yeah.
now in the last 100 or 150 years or whatever it is, skin cancer is on the rise. What else is on the rise nowadays is healthcare products, skincare products. I believe that in the future, more and more science will come out that shows that all these toxins that people on their screen are actually having the opposite effect of what they thought to have.
Yeah. So you would just argue that it's actually good for you, but you also mentioned that eating specific things can actually block your
Mhm.
pores from sweating in the right way, which
Exactly. What we talked about earlier is
Yeah.
how the skin detoxifies all these compounds that we inhale, we eat, we drink, like plastic in drink water or anything else. It needs to be detoxified some way. If it's not in the stool, then the body is going to get it out
Mhm.
of the body through the sweat, through the
Mhm.
skin. Then if the sun hits the skin in those moments, that's when inflammation or sunburns happen. A big one like that is seed oils.
Yeah.
So seed oils or vegetable oils like canola oil, sunflower oil, all those oils, they contain a lot of omega-6s, which are very inflammatory in the body. The
Mhm.
body tried to push this out, and a lot of people who actually have diets that are high in seed oil, they're burned more easily. And I've heard, this is not from a study, but I've heard this from friends who switch from an omnivore diet or a vegan diet to a carnivore diet. They're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm in the Costa Rican sun, I don't burn at all.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
And then what about like for the nighttime? You also mentioned about red light and how important that is, and how it could just really help in sleeping and improve cellular energy, just increase collagen production and all of these things. I want to hear from you more about why it is important. And I think you're always traveling and carrying your red lights with
Yes,
you.
Exactly. I have a red light about this size that travels with me everywhere I go in my suitcase. And every
Yeah.
night when the sun sets, I turn it on. It's the only artificial light that's on in the whole accommodation.
No way.
I see it a little bit like an ancient campfire.
But for how long do you do it every night?
So at night, like shining it on my body,
Yeah.
I will do that for about anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. There's been times I've done it for hours, working on my laptop, standing with the red light right next to me. For
So
like
it's just wait. Let me get this right. It's just the red light without any other light.
exactly.
That's it. Like no white, nothing. So it's not just red light on your body, but it's the only light.
Yes. And I'm glad actually that you mentioned this because I actually heard this about another podcast that one of the biggest causes, let me get this right, the biggest causes of damage to the skin nowadays is artificial light. A lot
Oh,
of people
wow.
nowadays, they're inside
I'm
all
actually
the
gonna
time.
look it up.
Yes, turning on artificial light the whole day because they're inside
Mm.
and they're actually blocked from the sun. The people are actually not that long in the sun. So also the idea that people are getting skin cancer from being in the sun maybe 20 minutes a day for every single day for their whole life is just preposterous.
Crazy. And the last few things that I also thought were very interesting is you spoke about how the brotherhood can actually really, really help a man's physical and mental health because of the oxytocin levels. But I want to hear more how you sort of analyzed it.
Yes. When a few years ago I was doing a lot of acro yoga, which is acrobatic yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do acrobatic yoga, you're basically doing yoga on top of another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit comparable to things that they do, the acrobatics that they do in the circus, like Cirque du Soleil. And I noticed even on days I was not in the mood, I was having a bad mood, I didn't want to go out, and I still went to the acro yoga class or meeting. When I was there with the people, doing my best, getting all these poses, like these handstands and all these foot stands and all the different poses, afterwards it would just give me a surge of energy. And I've noticed similar whenever we meet with like-minded brothers
Mm-hmm.
and we learn something together or we do some hard training together, whether it's that training in the gym or training on the range with guns, that single focus to work together for one goal or one like-minded goal.
Just
of-
a shared goal, a common belief or a common purpose
Exactly. It really
aligns
lot of-
everyone together.
it really gives that extra understanding of each other,
Yeah.
empathy with other people, and also understanding what they need or how can I help them, and then they think how they can help me, and this it's like an upward spiral
Nice.
that is bigger than that is big because of all the people working towards it instead of just one. It's like almost like 1 + 1 is not 2, but 1 + 1 is 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And one big contributor to that effect is oxytocin, that is increased when we're communicating with people in our group, people of the same beliefs or from the same culture. And oxytocin has a lot of benefits that are like increased verbal fluency, brain power, it heals wounds faster, and a lot of this oxytocin is made when we're in social settings.
Amazing. And the most controversial one, the one that you spoke about also, is how pain and suffering actually benefits in a weird way, or in a bizarre way. It actually benefits men and their health because of something called the AMCC. But I want you to, because you're the one that like taught me about this, and when I read and I started reading about it, I'm like, oh my god, wow, this is crazy.
I actually learned this from a podcast of a neuroscientist called Andrew Huberman. And he talked about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or the AMCC. There's an area of the brain that is involved with willpower and resilience. And what appears to be the thing is when we do something we don't like to do, but then we do it anyway, for example, getting into an ice bath or doing a hard workout, this area from the brain grows. And they've discovered in athletes that this area is bigger. In obese people, it's smaller. But when these obese people learn diet, it actually grows. And when we do an activity that we actually enjoy, this area shrinks. So it's actually paramount to keep this area big by doing things we don't like. And that's how it grows willpower. And they've also discovered a very positive correlation with people who will live a long time. They have this piece of the brain, or this part of the brain is bigger than in people who don't live that long. So the willpower is not only the willpower to do difficult things, it's also the willpower to live.
Wow, amazing. I could talk to you for hours, really, but I know we're short on time, and but I'm just so happy to have you here, and it was really an honor hosting you. And I just hope that we meet again. Unfortunately, I'm traveling soon, but maybe when we come back to Dubai.
Definitely. The feeling is mutual. I really appreciate you inviting me here and us talking. We could go on for hours indeed.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll stay in touch, definitely. But thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it. Thank you.